waiting for that grant proposal that I talked about with the $100,000. We're just waiting to hear in the new year on that, and we need to be shovel ready for the spring. So that is ongoing. I can give a further update in the new year. But right now, speaking of Larry, I'm trying to think, Larry, how many years that we've been in Rotary, and I think I joined Rotary in 1990, or maybe sooner. And I thought, well, this is such a great organization. Larry, you should come out to it. And a year later, Larry came out. We've been in Rotary ever since. So that's a long time.
It is.
And so Larry, as you know, most people know a little bit about Larry. He's done many different jobs, but they went up north. And with Jackie, his new wife at the time, what year were you married?
2012, actually.
2012, so just before. And so Jackie, I want to talk a little bit about her. And by the way, they both have transferred back to our club. Jackie's Rotarian too, so we want to get a classification talk in the new year and get that going. Today they're going to talk about their North experience. I spent 6 weeks up in the Arctic Islands way back in 1979, 1980, and it snowed in July. But I went to Cambridge Bay, Resolute Bay, and I had all these stories, and I grew this beard, and people started calling me Farley for Farley Moda. I had so many stories, so I'm sure I can't wait to hear their stories about the North. Rather than 6 weeks, it was 7 years. So Jackie is retired from the Canadian Forces Reserves after 29 years of service there. So that's something you probably weren't aware of. So they in the last two and a half years in Nunavut, was the Assistant Deputy Minister of Programs and Standards Department of Health. So that's what Jackie was doing up there. Larry was the Director of Social Assistance up there. So so they were members of the club up there, the Rotary Club, and Jackie was the recipient of the Paula Harris Award in 2017. So I'd like to hear more about her experience in Rotary at another time. So they're both looking forward to getting involved with our club and adding some enthusiasm, which I know they are. But without further ado, we're going to have them come up and give us some. I see they've got all kinds of things over here. And Larry's got his seal tie and his seal vest on, so he's dressed appropriate for this talk. So how about a warm welcome for
So all the music is from groups from Iqaluit that we were playing earlier, and that we'll play. Because we can probably talk about the music, and a lot of it you'll hear is in Inuktitut, actually, which is the language of Nunavut.
I'd start as soon as I can sing along.
Well, yeah, I'm going to start. So imagine, if you want to even close your eyes, but imagine 75 years ago, living in Nunavut as an Inuit. What you had was, in the summertime, a tent. You were nomadic. You followed the herds of caribou, and in the summertime you would go near the ocean so you could get char. In the wintertime, normally by this time of year you would build an igloo. And actually igloos are quite warm. In the igloo, the only heat, now imagine this is a miniature size. If this was this long, it's called a killick. And what the killick did is that's what they cooked on, that's what they had for light, and that's what they had for heat in the igloos. And they had it's called Arctic cotton. They would roll Arctic cotton up and put it in the killick, and there would be maybe 4 or 5 wicks. They would light the Arctic cotton in the killick with the whale blubber, or whale oil, and that's what would allow the light, etc. So on Baffin Island, most of the food there was eaten raw. The fish was all eaten raw. The caribou was all eaten raw. The seal was all eaten raw. And in fact, a lot of that food is still what most of the Inuit eat up there. In fact, I'll tell you a quick little story. While we're fixing the very first year up there, we went to they call it a country feast. And that's where they have country food. And they go to a public place and they put a tarp out and they bring out the country food. So it would be a walrus, seal, caribou, char, and all of the other things you can think of. The seals would be literally warm. They would still have them fairly warm. They would slit them open.
Let's not get too many details about it.
Slit them open, and one of the greatest delicacies for Inuit elders is a seal liver. So while the seal's still warm, they would grab the liver, and then they would share the liver amongst themselves. And we got to witness that one about the first 6 months we were up there. Just about turned my stomach, but that's something that.
Did you try it? Larry?
What?
Did you try it?
I've tried seal, but not seal liver. I've tried raw seal and cooked seal, and if I never have it again, I'll be as happy as a little. How are we doing, Jane?
I'm great.
Perfect.
So the president of the Inuit Tech Planning Association, this computer's having a little bit of difficulty. He asked a crowd of individuals to picture yourself living in a territory where you can only get there by plane, your food is only flown in by plane, and if you need medical services, you can only be flown out by plane. So when Larry and I learned that we were going to live in Nunavut, we were thinking, what are we getting ourselves into? But at the end of the 7 years, it's been the best experience of our lives. So we decided to frame our presentation today a little bit of education and a little bit of storytelling about our experience up there. And hopefully this thing will stop having a seizure. So Nunavut became into being in 1999, is divided into 3 regions. It has 3 different time zones, and 25 communities make up Nunavut. It became in being in 1999 as a result of separating from the Northwest Territories. And the capital, which everybody used to know as Frobisher Bay, is now called Iqaluit. And that's the Iqaluit in Inuktitut means plenty of fish. So it's the place of plenty of fish is the meaning of Iqaluit. And Nunavut itself means our land. And it's 1/5 of Canada's landmass, which is just amazing when you think it's got 30,000 people that makes up 1/5 of Canada's landmass. And obviously the original communities up in Nunavut were established as a result of the dew line, of the early warning signal system. That's how many of the communities originally came into being, as well as the original Hudson Bay trading post. So Iqaluit was Frobisher Bay was one of the original Hudson Bay posts. It has 3 official languages: Inuit, which includes Inuit, Inuktitut, and Inuinnaqtun. Inuinnaqtun is in the Kitikmeot region, which is the northwest region, and Inuktitut is spoken in all 3 regions, and then French and English are the 3. So anything that we produce up in Nunavut as a government agency, we produce in 3 languages, and 4 languages for production.
Inuktitut has syllabics as the written language. Inuinnaqtun didn't have a written language, so now they use letters, like English letters. Most of the words seem to be about this long, and of course French and English.
So the flag, the Nunavut flag, just a simple little thing. The blue and yellow symbolize the riches of the land and the sea. The red is reference to Canada. And then the Inukshuk, in Iqaluit, you'll see Inukshuks, or Inuksuk, they'll say them differently. If an Inukshuk has a hole in it in the middle, what that means is it's lining up with another Inukshuk, and it's showing the way for people that are traveling on the land. So they're used to symbolize a direction for people that are on the land, or if it's a full Inukshuk like this one, it means there's a cache that's buried close by it. And a cache could be a walrus cache, it could be caribou that they're fermenting or that they're keeping inside. So Inukshuks actually had a purpose up there.
So I'll tell you a quick little story about a cache. So when I worked at the Nunavut Housing Corporation, and as Brent said, when we left, I worked for Family Services. Jackie worked for the Department of Health. But when I first went out and worked for the Nunavut Housing Corporation, one of the Inuit elders came in with a frozen piece of walrus. Now this frozen piece of walrus was about this big, green. It was green. And it had been in a cache, so it had been out on the land for 30 days. It had kind of liquefied, and then they take it and they freeze it, and then they slice it off, and they eat it. And that actually has hallucinogenic type qualities. It was their old kind of beer, I guess. But I think what it really did is it really gave you food poisoning. Now I tried a piece about the size of a toonie, when in Rome, or when in Nunavut. So I tried a piece about this big, about this thick, and I was sick for 3 days. Literally sick for 3 days. So obviously your body, for some of the food that they eat up there, has to be used to some of that food.
And Larry will try anything, so we learned while we were out there. So the little bit of difference for Nunavut compared to the rest of Canada is Nunavut operates on a consensus government system. So there's no political parties up in Nunavut. MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, are elected based on an election per community, or there'll be a couple of communities together. We could have a politician in our Legislative Assembly that is in either by acclamation or won because they got 3 or 4 votes. Or they won with thousands of votes if they were in housing. We have 23 members of the Legislative Assembly, and as Larry likes to describe it, it's kind of like picking the Pope. What they do is the members elect the Speaker of the House first, so because the Speaker has control of the Legislative Assembly, and then they elect their members of Cabinet. And then once they do that, they select a Premier, they elect the Premier, and then the Premier assigns the portfolios to Cabinet. So everything that moves through the Legislative Assembly is done by consensus, and it also allows the members of the Legislative Assembly, regular members that are not part of the Cabinet, actually get a better say in big policy and legislation that's moving through the government of Nunavut. Where in Ontario or BC, where you have parties, you don't see that regular membership and standing committees happening the same you do in Nunavut. So they have a bigger say, the regular members, because there's no opposition. It's about consensus, and they get an input into change before it actually makes it into the Assembly.
So a regular member, an MLA, could be the Premier. There's no voting for a Premier. You only vote in MLAs. The MLAs pick the Premier. So any of the 23 MLAs could become a Premier, Speaker of the House, etc., which is quite odd. And of course, there's no parties, no partisan politics. It's all free vote.
And of course, the Land Claims Agreement is the largest land claims agreement ever settled by an Aboriginal group in Canadian history. And what that does, it ensures that they maintain the integrity of their culture and their way of life as far as their rights to the land, their rights to hunting, their rights to employment. There's different articles within the Land Claims Agreement that identifies what we as government must make sure and acknowledge, and the integrity is kept. And they have an Inuit organization in Nunavut called Nunavut Tungavik Incorporation, and they're the keepers of the Land Claims Agreement. They're the ones that make sure that the government of Nunavut is doing their job properly. So they monitor that, but we are guided